Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Sapling Edition of Evergreen Perspective. I'm your host, Ben Chrisley, and today we are talking to yet another charter review candidate. We got Eric LaBrant. He is from
District 1, Position 3.
All right, let's just dive right in here, Eric. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and just let us know how long you've been in Clark County.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Portland, Vancouver area, and I've been living back in Vancouver since about 2008, and wouldn't change it for the world. I raised both my kids here as a solo bachelor dad, and uh, yeah,
Awesome. What was it? Now you're a port commissioner, is that right?
yes, yeah, I'm going on. This is year 10 on being the Port of Vancouver Board of Commissioners,
And
and
so,
yeah.
what was it that made you throw your hat in the ring for that position?
We had a proposal back in 2013 to build an oil by rail terminal in Vancouver, and my house is about a mile from where that would have happened. And I'm kind of a stubborn fella, and I thought, like if something's going to be built, we should still be able to live next to it like good neighbors. And it was looking less and less like that was going to be possible. And I thought, well, we shouldn't have to move just because someone else doesn't want to be good neighbors. And so ultimately chose to run for the Port Commission based on that.
Gotcha. And so now we fast forward to today, and a few months ago, you made a trusty decision. You were going to run for Charter Review Commissioner. What was it that made you want to get involved with that when you already had this other role? What made you want to step your foot into this new one?
Well, the charter's I think more important than a lot of folks realize in terms of how our county operates. So it's really important that that charter review process, where we make tweaks to that document, is successful and that it stays focused. And as I looked at who is running, we've got some squirrely folks throughout the county that could ultimately end up on that commission. So I really want to make sure that we show up strong and have just again a really focused process to make sure that it's not getting sidelined by specific ideologies or agendas.
Sure. So, in your own words, what does the Charter Review Commission actually do?
So back in 2014, Clark County adopted our home rule charter, and one of the biggest changes that makes to the structure of the county is it gives us the ability to change the structure of the county, like just like you would upgrade the software on your computer as it gets older. Same idea. We have the ability now to make those upgrades every few years, and this is the process. What the charter does, it lays out the really the fundamental structure of our county. Everything from whether the county manager is elected or appointed, how many county councilors there are. It even determined back in 2014 that we would have a county council rather than a county commission, which kind of addresses how those elected representatives interact with the staff at the county. So it governs those kinds of like really ground level foundational things, not so much on the policy side.
All right. So, the charter's not dealing with direct policy. So, why should Clark County residents, why should they care about what's going on with the charter?
Well, I think the fact that it doesn't deal with policy is a big part of why people should be kind of paying attention and at least aware of kind of those ideological folks wanting to be part of that commission. Because one of the things that you could do, for example, is try and change the structure, the fundamental structure of the county to get some sort of outcome, like uh, changing how we review growth management in order to have something to do with housing. And that's not really what the charter is set up to do. And so you can really kind of break the county structure by doing that, and probably not accomplish the things even that people want to accomplish.
All right. So, are there certain areas that you're looking to focus your attention on, or certain changes that you're looking to make to the charter?
There aren't any specific changes that I'm really dead set on. I think we could maybe do a better job at defining the resources for the Charter Review Commission itself. Right now, there's no structure around a budget for community outreach or for legal review, legal support to make sure that those changes that we send forward to voters are in fact legal under state law. But the biggest one for me is really around structure and process. We put together a process at the port in 2017 in developing the strategic plan where we kind of flipped the process on its head and did all the community outreach up front. We asked folks like at the very, very beginning before we even had a first draft, what does it success look like for you? And the results are fantastic. Folks really felt like they were being listened to and like they had a part of the process. And I think we have an opportunity to apply that same model to the charter review process in a way that hasn't been done before.
Right. And so, with that in mind, how would you propose, if elected to the position, how would you go about setting forth this transparency and getting this feedback from the citizens of Clark County?
I think it's both an informational kind of conversation and frankly a sales process of making sure that other folks that I serve with understand why I think that's a good idea to take that approach. It's one of the things that we found really successful in that strategic planning process was to have really focused stakeholder groups. So where sometimes you might normally have some tension between, say, business interests, business and economic development, or environmental concerns, really talking to those stakeholder groups kind of more one-on-one. So we convened a group of business and economic development experts and said, what does success look like for you? And then we convened a group of environmentalists and said, what does success look like for you? And rather than arguing with each other, because we had those focused discussions, we were able to get great ideas from all these different groups that were all important. And we spent less time focusing on the tension and the disagreement and more time focusing on really what that vision for the future is. And I think we can do that here.
Right. Obviously, this is a nonpartisan position. It's taken on, some heavy partisan tones. And at the end of the day, there's going to be 15 members on this commission. There's going to be a wide range of political ideologies. There's going to be some heavy disagreement, I would imagine. How do you handle those type of disagreements in that environment, or what would you plan to do to help mitigate those being distractions into getting the job done?
There was a book a few years ago called Start With Why. I think the author was Simon Sinek. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I try to keep that in the back of my mind when there's someone that I disagree with, to really think about where they're coming from and what it is that's really important to them. So we may not agree on what I found working in government and policy is we might disagree on how we get there, but ultimately tend to agree more often than not on what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Um, an example a few years ago was the city of Vancouver having an ongoing discussion around homelessness in the downtown area. And there were folks approaching it from the humanitarian standpoint, saying like, hey, this is a human tragedy that people are going through this. And we had folks from the downtown business community saying, hey, this is unacceptable. I've got folks like, going through my dumpster every day and sleeping on my front doorstep and sometimes using my front door as a urinal. Like, that's unacceptable. But at the end of the day, they both wanted the same thing, which was to not have people sleeping on the sidewalk. Nobody wants that. And so we had the opportunity to bring folks together, understanding that they were actually asking for the same thing, rather than that tension and that back and forth of arguing against each other. So that's kind of what I try and do when I'm not in agreement with folks.
Right. No, I think that's a good way of looking at things, and hopefully, if you're elected to the position, you can bring that in, and people can come together, so to speak. Um, as we look to kind of wrap up this little segment as a whole, what's the one thing, Eric, you'd like voters that are listening to this to take away and to know about you and what you're going to bring to the charter review and how you're going to go about your business?
Well, I think my kind of focus in the throughout the campaign and with messaging has just been that I have experience in working with public policy and in seeing how those policies play out over time. Um, and I have a very specific plan, as kind of as we've talked about, in terms of doing that public outreach, not just so that folks are feeling listened to. I think we get better ideas, but also at the end of the day, when we carry those ideas or those suggestions forward to the voters to vote on, uh, that they stand a better chance of success. Folks will understand what they're voting about, and so we'll get better results from the community. I think um, there's a sense, especially when we look at national politics, that folks aren't, no one's listening. And as you listen, as you talk with folks in the community, a lot of folks really have that sense of like, we're just not being listened to by our elected representatives. And I think in a small way, by having that two-way discussion, we really can help kind of change that a little bit here in Clark County. So.
And so, if you're elected and you serve your 2-year term on the commission, what would you consider to be a success? What would you consider successful office?
I think if the community comes out of it feeling like they've been heard, even if we don't, all get exactly what we want out of the process, if folks feel like they've really had the opportunity to be heard, I think that's honestly the biggest and best thing. Um, I think the other, kind of key thing is making sure that we have policy recommendations that are appropriate for the charter that pass muster with the voters. And then the kind of big picture, long term one is if we look back, 20, 50 years from now at, Clark County in the future, that it's healthy, that it's vibrant, that folks are happy about living here, and that maybe they look back and they say, yeah, I'm glad things went the way they did.
So, tell us about, or tell the folks rather, how they can find out more about you and more about your campaign.
Yeah, I'm easy to get a hold of. I can give you my number. It's 503-683-2386. It's not a 360 number, but that's what was available. You can also go to my Facebook page. It's Eric LaBrant for Charter Review Commissioner, or even my website, just labrantforcharter.com. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. My contact info is also in the voter guide, in case you didn't get a chance to write that down. And but however you're able to get a hold of me, I'd love to hear from you. And it is an informational process, both for the campaign and for the folks who serve on that board. And so, any questions that you have, there's no dumb questions here. We're happy to answer those and kind of talk through things.
Eric, I appreciate you coming on and telling us a little bit about yourself and what you plan on bringing to to the charter. And I'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
Sounds great, and hopefully look forward to working with you coming in January.
Yes, sir.